There it is.
All right. For those of you just joining, welcome to the Tuesday Triggers podcast. And look at what we got. Alex himself is in the chat, dropping it. Yo, guys,
Oh,
welcome.
snap.
um,
My
cool.
bromance here.
Yep. We've got a bunch of
Abby.
people here that are joining today because, Brandon, they know your work in creating MCPs, in the work that you've done for Instantly. And I think for those people joining that don't know you, I would consider you one of the most um, technologically forward people I know in our circle, which we're a group of technologically forward people. But we were just talking about it on the not live session about like your understanding of every MCP, what you can do with it, like every AI that's coming out versus me, who I've been running a successful agency for the last 2 years, but like feel like when I used to be on the cutting edge was like amazing and you just fall behind and you just start to lose your shit.
Yeah.
Um, so
Appreciate
today
it,
we'll,
man.
yeah, today we'll talk about MCPs. Again, always love chatting with you. I think one of the most humble, hardworking, cool dudes in the space. You never get involved in the drama. You've always got positive things to say. Uh, Notably, why you've got a small but mighty group of clients. I know you keep it intentionally fairly small. So for anyone
Yep.
watching that wants to hire you're probably just you probably just don't have room, so just come to me instead. No, I'm just kidding. Probably creating the artificial FOMO, anyways. But let's spend today talking about MCP. So for anyone that just joined, that's never used an MCP or has basic experience, why don't you break down how you would describe what an MCP does?
MCP is like a toolbox for APIs, really. I mean, it's an LLM extension. I mean, just it's not anything like crazy new because obviously there are APIs around what we do already, but it is, in my opinion, the next wave for like a protocol standard, if you will, being able to make things more agentic for literally anything, and it's freaking on fire right now. Obviously, there's an MCP. It seems like every week for every use case for whatever, and it's overwhelming as shit. And I think that even now it's never a better time to actually understand the foundations of it, how it works, how to plug it in, because it's only getting easier and easier. And then there's, of course, like bad guys in the market, right? Where they want to take advantage of a lot of things. And who wants to go down that rabbit hole, right? So it's really a wrapper around APIs, right? You can hook up an MCP, your CRM, your Zoom sessions, your Fireflies, literally anything you can think of, and it allows the agent to pull in those and talk to it and then pretty much put anything behind it. So that was a lot of fluff, but that's pretty much what it is. I mean, it's not like, oh my gosh, this shiny object syndrome, but like it's really important to just to understand like what it is to connect it, because it's going to happen whether people like it or not. So
Yeah. So that's a good explanation. It's a way to seamlessly call multiple different APIs, bring them back, and have that conversation just happen, right? It's
yep.
like there was agentic AI, and that was good and all, and this is kind of the next or a wrapper, but like it's like the next wave of it. It's getting more elegant, more capable of simplicity. It's allowing you to just kind of talk to it, right, in a different way than
Yep.
maybe going and creating an agentic LangChain workflow and N8N that's like, requires a lot of technical prowess. So,
Yep. Yep.
for people listening and watching, what's like the easiest thing that they could go do to get started, like playing around with an MCP tomorrow that would help them digest and understand how to utilize this stuff?
Yep. Well, there's one of them, which is Hey Reach. We just dropped the remote MCP server literally yesterday. I just recorded a video for that. I mean, it's literally easy as shit. You just go to the integration section, you copy the URL because it's a remote MCP. You can go into Claude, connect to the connector, and you're done. You can start interacting immediately with it. And it's the official one, so obviously there's no funny business inside the server itself. And so just start interacting if you're a HeyReach user on what you can actually do. There is a ton of tools in there, to be able to just do whatever you want. And I think you can, like with our business, you can conceptualize like, okay, if this happens, how do we plug that in, right? It'll even work in Claygent, inside Clay, because they have their MCP beta now. So same thing. N8N, it works in N8N as well. So being able to even interact and just play with that is it'll scratch the itch when it comes to shiny object syndrome. You know what I mean? So
So
that's a start.
let's say you plug it into HeyReach, right? What are you gonna go do then? What actions would you take, or what would you start to do with it?
Well, simply you could be like, what campaigns am I running? Test it out. What are some of my highest performing campaigns? You can check your unread messages. You can even reply. There's things that you can do from the API side or the MCP side, and it pulls into, and then even make suggestions around reply to this person. You know what I mean? So no different than what you do with the Unibox, but that's a start for how you can actually leverage the MCP there. So if you did, for example, research in Claude, you're like, cool, I just identified somebody. What's their LinkedIn profile? Okay, cool. Add them to this campaign inside HeyReach using HeyReach MCP, and it will do that for you. So literally just seamless.
That's really sick. Yeah, we do that. We do it with ClickUp. So we've moved over to a ClickUp dashboard, which for anyone watching, we're thoroughly enjoying it. It's becoming super easy to use. But
Yep.
we query into Email Bison or whatever sending platform we're using to read the conversation, bring that back so the client can see all of the leads and all of the conversations, which again, you used to be able to do that, right? You could pull
Hmm.
everything and push everything between Smart Lead instantly, Email Bison, but now it just like it does it, it presents it in a way that's like there's no thinking, right? It's like we don't have to chop out rich text or whatever. It's just like give me the summary of the conversation. What did we say to them? What did they respond? Why? And it's just become a heck of a lot easier. The
Yep.
other thing it does is it actually goes in and looks at the activity in ClickUp, so like the tasks that people on our team have completed during the week, and it gives that summary to the client so they know all of the work that's going on in the background. Hey, we launched this campaign. Hey, we did these 10 things, like all of this
Yep.
stuff that typically clients don't see and understand, like, damn, like this team is really putting in a lot of work and effort to build this stuff. So, anyways, just one use case from our side, but we're like literally like a month into using MCPs. Of course, you've got like, you know, 11 months or something like that. So, a little bit different of a level. What about for
Yeah, I
instant?
mean, ClickUp
Oh,
is a good one because you can even say like update this action or pull this to streamline a lot of that stuff for sure. Yeah, so even just using just everything's coming back to the chat bot, which is just like, okay, do this next, right? Yeah, it's huge. The other thing I would say that's a big MCP that I use every day is Firecrawl. Their MCP server is just so freaking useful for so many endpoints and so many reasons. Is
so
just
you
simple
you
web
mentioned this.
scraping.
Oh, sorry, you mentioned this earlier. I don't know what Firecrawl is, so yeah, a rundown
Yeah.
of what that looks like.
Firecrawl, I mean, it's a web scraping tool and allows you to, I mean, web scrape literally anything. And there's a number of different endpoints, down to like deep research. They're coming out with things. I mean, they're probably coming out with something today, but they have so many endpoints around their API and their MCP. They update that regularly. And even in Cursor or even just with agents within like any den, for example, you could say, go to this site, pull it in, and you can have context around what you want to do. It pulls in a site, and it's similar to Claygent, but in my opinion, Firecrawl is just a lot more versatile with being able to use the MCP. So,
Sure. What
yep.
about you had mentioned browser MCP? Is that like this? Is that the same, or is that how is that different?
Browser MCP is another really good MCP tool. I use it in Cursor because when you're building a product or whatever, right? You have two parts. You have the Chrome extension, which locally it needs to connect to your browser, so you enable it on the tab, and then you install the browser MCP on your IDE, your Cursor or Windsurf, whatever. You make sure it's connected, it'll populate it, but it'll do similar to like ChatGPT agent where it'll actually go up and click on something, type something out. But I mean, you can literally watch your computer just run itself. within browser, but it's really powerful because if you're trying to build something such as logging in or test a product or test whatever you're trying to build, you don't have to constantly do that thing. So it's a lot of browser automation, but you can literally watch it happen. So that way you can, know exactly what it looks like on the end user level. So,
You said for people that are just starting to get into this realm, right? Because a lot of us, have never used MCPs. What would your advice be to like just go start figuring out use cases, right? Like I think you had mentioned
mhm.
previously, like just go and get cursor set up and start going from there. Like what would be the most intuitive for someone who doesn't truly understand this space?
Download Cursor, bring it up. If you know how to, speak any language, talk to the agent and
Cool.
say, what is this? If you get pointed to a GitHub repository or anything that's JSON and you don't quite understand, plug it in there and then say, okay, do it for me, and then explain what you just did. And it will do that a lot more than ChatGPT, because ChatGPT can't write, it'll write code, but it won't execute code for you. You know what I mean? And then I would also say go on GitHub. GitHub is a candy store. There's so much good open source projects on there. Learn how to fork or clone a repo and download that to your machine. Be like, cool, what is this about? How can I run it? Tell me how to run it, and just poke around. You'd be quite surprised on how much you can get away with. And then you have an idea, but like, I can improve it by this, improve it, test it, and then you can make your first contribution towards open source community stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's that easy, but like it's gonna create new unlocks for you on when you have an idea what it means technically. You know what I mean? So
How do you
you just got
think?
to dive in. It's overwhelming, but you just got to dive in and watch as it works, because it's going to use certain language and words that, if you're not familiar, with like Node and like Vercel and Supabase and, just a lot of the very high level things of what it takes to do like linting errors, like that kind of shit. You just like, what is that? You know what I mean? And there's a lot of like history around the coding that I find, like even linting errors. I'm like, why do they call it linting? Well, it's like lint in your pocket. No one likes that shit. And I'm like, oh, that's where it came from. That's cool. You know what I mean? So there's some personality behind all the code vibes. Yep.
Nice. Now, how do you think like this is going to impact, let's say, small businesses or enterprise level businesses? How will this impact their rev ops? Maybe how will this affect lead gen, since we talk about that all the time? How do you
Yep.
see this changing the space over the course of the next year?
Well, I like to think of it like in the older SaaS days, well, older, it's like now, but it's only getting easier to build your own custom SaaS. And this is the worst it is today, because it's only going to just get easier and easier. But if everybody has an idea and they can build it, okay, cool. But then that just means, in my opinion, our value in terms of actually executing the go to market and the sale of things, like there's a lot of people that'll be introverted and code something, but they don't know a lick of sales or cold email or that kind of thing. So in my opinion, we're secure. At least, we're going to be at the sharp end of things. And then so that's my opinion there. But for what we do, kind of like what a lot of times what we'll actually start with is we won't go directly to Clay. Clay is more of our middle tech stack versus our starting point. But I will use Crawl for AI or open, scrapers, and we'll use like DeepSeek just to scrape the entire world of internet on capturing like a vacuum of what we can do, and then we can normalize it, put it into palatable CSVs like up to 50K rows kind of thing, so we can actually upload it to Clay. We'll prepare it for Clay and then enrich and go. You know what I mean? And then it allows us to even do cross row, cross column analysis, because right now with Clay you can't do that. And so it allows us to really take a high level snapshot through CSVs. And if you bring it into an actual development environment, it allows you to do so much, and then you can reprioritize and rescore, and then push to something like a webhook within Clay, and it'll do it all for you. And then you set up your Clay automation, go from there. So to answer your question, I just think our game, if you level up and start with an IDE, like you can't get much more engineering and you have no limits when you're bringing things back to the code. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I
What do
would
you
just
mean
say that,
by
and then you can leverage MCP on that, right? So
you said Clay can't do cross row, cross table analysis? You mean that this can look very holistically at all of your data across all of your tables, or is that, or what exactly did you mean by that?
cross row, cross column, not cross table. So you can do lookups across table, right? But let's say you have a column, like with Google Sheets, you can run a formula on column to column, like how much is this total sum, whatever, right? Whereas Clay, you can't do that. And then with rows, everything is connected row by row. But let's say you have a CRM mess where you have a lot of fuzzy logic and like could be uppercase, lowercase. Someone can input random shit from years ago that's an SDR. Like I've seen, it's a mess. We all know it's a freaking mess. So if you put it into Clay, you're limited by not only 50K rows, but you're limited by row because they're not going to know, okay, row 29,000 is not the same as row five, but you can import that into Cursor. You can get either pandas or polars, that kind of, there's a Python libraries that could really just high level take a look at your entire CSV and be able to analyze it much more efficiently and quicker. So for sure. And across millions of rows. So you're limitless.
Interesting. That's a so let's talk about this on a base level because that's pretty technical stuff, right? How can someone, you know, everyone's CRM is an absolute shithole, right? Like, I don't think
Of
I've ever come
course.
across a CRM that's like fantastic. But you were talking about, or I think I've heard you talk about like kind of doing something around this to do some of those like CRUD actions, maybe like kind of break down this idea that could be
Hmm.
implemented by any company that needs to either fix their CRM or should be like way more thoughtful about like resurfacing old ops that people aren't seeing and like reactivating and re-engaging people. Like, how could we use something to do something like this?
Well, the first thing is to understand where they're at because a lot of times you let's say you have a small sales team. Okay, cool. There's a certain way they input data into their CRM, and then you have big sales teams, same thing. There's always going to be some sort of process that's not quite dialed in. They could literally do a typo. It's not standardized, so they could do a typo in any regard, and it's not going to be tracked, right? The contact to the company level, whatever that is, and then a lot of clients, even nowadays, are using like HubSpot or Salesforce, whatever they're using. They're limited by what they can actually see and what their search is, and to know how do I even nurture clients if they don't have a lot of automations, right? So when we come in, you got to make sense of this entire mess from the get-go, and you got to do it fast, right? So what I would suggest is have them export it, and before you do any CRM updates, because that can create a whole nother mess, that's their system of record, is just to run Python across it. And that way you can just get a really good analysis of what they're looking at. And a lot of times you can have an action plan on being able to clean it up, whatever they need to prioritize. There could be some lost deals that they can pick up on and re-engage that they didn't even think about just because it didn't come up in their search. Follow-ups. I mean, there's so many broken areas because it's legacy SaaS and whatever they set, it's just overwhelming already. But if you can run that in an environment with Python and you put AI behind it, now you can reason with it. And that's very powerful.
Oh man, that's huge. I think that like just the desire for that on a company like you could create a product around that. I mean, I know people have been doing
Yep.
that with Clay and helping enrich and fix people's CRMs, but like this is really taking it to the next level. Like I
Yep.
think like has anyone requested that you do anything like this? Have you gotten client requests around this type of stuff?
Yes. Yes, for sure. Several clients. We have one of my clients, Crisp. They're great. I can mention them, but we are doing lots of work with them around that and just making sense of, okay, how many lawyers do they have? What lawyers have we not touched? And how do we engage with anybody that we haven't engaged with? You know what I mean? And the other thing too is people you don't want to reach out to, your DNC. Because in a world where you can have all the data and reach out to everybody in the world, who do you not want to reach out to? Because that could turn into a mess too, right? So I do a little bit more. So the way I've kind of stacked it, because there's really no like SOP around it, but I'm like, look, you have your source of record, your system of record, your source of truth, your CRM, and then you have all of this web scraping nonsense that we're doing. Like, you can do this, you can do that, whatever, right? It's not quite prepared enough to like, let me just push this to your CRM and make even more of a mess, right? So we'll stand up a Supabase, use Supabase MCP to make sense of the schema and how you can structure it. And then you can make yourself a React front end dev so they can see an intelligent, you're coming up with like an experimental, like middle ground, call it like a staging or an intelligence platform for them
Yeah.
very easily. You push that to Vercel and you're done. I mean, it's just gets easier and easier. So that way now they have an intelligence platform. We can make sense of the data on how much they need to clean up, and then you can usually roadmap for at least the next 3 to 6 months, at least for
Damn.
client acquisition, client retention versus outside of lead gen. You know what I mean?
Now you're just blowing my mind, dude. Like I'm like, dude, can you please I'm gonna need to pay you for some consulting hours here because like I mean honestly that
Yeah.
should be just something by default going in and working with enterprise level clients that we do just immediately. And I've never done that. And that would be just such an incredible value add like that
Yep.
like I mean that could that's easy five figure, opportunity just to do that. And like the value that brings is insane. So
Yep.
that's a really really awesome use case. Andre, I had a question. I think like this is a great question. What's the number one use case for cold email lead gen agencies? Just thinking about how I can start using it.
For MCP
Yeah.
or well, Firecrawl's huge. Well, it's the ceiling. Like Clay is great for sprint work, basic integrations, the whole enrichment process. But for cold email lead gen, I mean, I would just say TAM scraping, being able to literally scrape your TAM wherever you get your data from, Google Maps, Apollo, you know how it is. Uh, Put that into Cursor project, install, the dependencies. I would suggest polars. There's pandas and polars. Those are Python libraries, and it allows you to do a good analysis on your data, and you can get away with some pretty good stuff very quickly. And then create yourself a webhook table, send it to Clay through webhook, and make sure you tell it to send it one by one, not in one giant payload. And then you're going to start to see things getting pushed. I think it's going to potentially turn some new stones that maybe that even like Clay is kind of limiting. You know what I mean? So.
Yep. Yep, that's awesome. All right, last question because I have a hard stop here. What do you think about the current market deep research API price expensiveness? Is there a way to build price performance system to replace those with low cost internal systems? Do you have any? That's a
It's a
technical
great question. So deep research now is a bit subjective. I see you referring to general deep research or OpenAI's like deep research feature.
I don't know.
Well, I'll cover both
Yeah.
just to cover it all. OpenAI's deep research has two ways to do it. Number one is generally you set the task and then you have to, once it's done, because it could be 5 minutes or hours, depending on what you need. And then it comes back to a webhook. So that is one way to do it. Or what you do is you send the request, you get an ID, and you pull it. Just, I'd say every 5 minutes or whatever, and be very careful and also set your thresholds on your OpenAI account because it can get really expensive really quickly. But to answer your question, and say this goes to the other one, when it comes to deep research, ask yourself why do you need deep research? Because sometimes clients want to know everything about anything about their client or their ICP. And is that enough to just start a conversation in cold email? So sometimes, actually most of the time, deep research is really not that relevant unless that is your lead magnet. Then do that on the reply to send them a report or whatever intelligence we need to give them, right? But just be very cautious on that. And so cost wise, I mean, deep research is really subjective. It's going to be expensive if you're running OpenAI's model there. But Firecrawl also has a good deep research. And here's another one. You can do some pretty good research around Grok 3 Mini, not Grok 4 yet, but Grok 3 Mini is a very cheap API that's connected to the internet. It's also connected to X, and it gives you sources, so it's verified. So that could give you some good nuggets on that's not outside the general internet, right? So I would just explore that.
Love it, man.
Yep.
Anything else you want to talk about that you're working on? I know you got
Just
some
keep
stuff
building,
coming
man. I
out. I know
mean,
you.
you're always gonna, dude, you're always gonna feel behind on shit. The FOMO's real. It's just what it is. But I love our group, freaking shoot me a DM, dude. It's always we're just trying to help each other out and provide for our families, bro. That's all I have to say about that. So
I know you got some stuff cooking. We'll see what comes out in the next couple of months, my friend. As always,
yeah,
thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate the hell out of you, dude. You're a great, just everything in the space, man. Everyone loves you. So have a good one
appreciate it, bro.
and take care, y'all.
All right. See you guys
Cool.
later.